G'day viewers, how are you? Made it to the end of another week. Congratulations. Doing a weekend edition of TFU, and man, it's been a week. It's one of those things where I'm really spoiled for choice, and I got into the frame of mind, like it got into my head, I was going to more or less do a retrospective on the year, even if I'm about a week early to do that, because events in Australia, we ended up with what seemed like bookends for the year, namely sex scandals involving National Party politicians. And to explain a little to the rest of the world, the dominant political parties in Australia, usually the government is formed either by the Labor Party, the supposed left-wing Progressive Party, and the Liberal National Party coalition, the conservative side of things. See, in the US you have the Democrats and the Republicans, and in the UK you have the Tories and Labour. But the Conservatives in Australia are actually a coalition. The Liberal Party, big L Liberal, please don't ask me to do the explanation again on why the Conservative Party is called the Liberals. It's because people's perception of things change, basically. And they're sort of city-based. They're more popular in the urban areas. And the National Party, who used to be called the Country Party, who purportedly represent the interests of people in country areas. People in the country areas didn't trust those city slickers. Neither Labor nor Liberal. They wanted their own conservative voice. So for years, that was the Country Party who became the National Party. So interestingly, in Australia, the dominant Conservative Party, you know, for the last, when did they form? 50, 60 years ago? The Liberal Party, they have never won government in their own right. They've always relied on their coalition partner, the more conservative part of the Conservative coalition, the National Party. If you're trying to work out what they're like, it's kind of like if you're like me and you grew up in the country and moved away and occasionally go back to your hometown. It's the person who you find looking at you funny, and when you say to them, what the fuck is your problem? They go, you got a pretty mouth. That's the National Party. Now, they like to say they're representing traditional values, and a lot of National Party MPs voted against marriage equality, for instance, saying that they were defending the sanctity of traditional marriage between a man and a woman. And this is where it gets weird, because we've had the year bookended by sex scandals with national MPs, starting with the guy who was at the time leader of the National Party, Barnaby Joyce, who during the marriage equality campaign in Australia trotted out his family and went, I'm protecting my family, I'm protecting my daughters by not letting the queers get married, I'm keeping everyone safe. At the exact same time as he was doing this, not literally the exact same time, but in parallel with this, he was fucking one of his staffers. See why I corrected myself a little? Because he wasn't going on camera saying, this is my family I'm protecting. This is my staffer. And it's occasionally fun for Australians who know just what an unappealing person Barnaby Joyce is, to just put back in their head that he's a mad rooter. Because he's so red-faced, we came to know him as the beet rooter. So while he was saying the sanctity of traditional marriage should be protected, he was fucking one of his staffers. So he lost his job as leader of the party, but not as an MP. He's still an MP, and he and some of his supporters still think he should be leader of the national parties. And then at the end of the year, there's this guy called Andrew Broad, who considered himself quite the protege of the beet rooter. You know, they make quite a pair together, quite honestly. He's fucking horrible, to put it simply. But he did the same thing. Voted against marriage equality, despite the fact his electorate in the plebiscite said by a majority marriage equality should be a thing. He voted against it. The sanctity of marriage. While he was going on sugar daddy websites trying to pay for the company of young ladies 20 years his junior. And probably the weirdest thing about this particular little sex scandal is how pathetic he was. How the young lady who met him through this sugar daddy website, she just painted him as pathetic. Shared some of his texts, sex, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, he really does not get the being sexy thing. Although, the one thing I will defend him on, that people ripped on him for, and look, we honestly should rip on him for everything, but there was apparently a series of texts where the young lady said, I find the Australian accent sexy, and he says, really, I come up behind you, hold you from behind and say, g'day, mate. And people saying, like, he thinks g'day, mate's sexy. So, no, this is the one thing I will defend him on. He, like a lot of Australians, when getting told by someone from another country, they find the Australian accent sexy, we go, really? Really? It does not seem that way to us. You think it's sexy? So he's done the thing. That was an obvious joke. The g'day, mate thing was obviously, she said an Australian accent is sexy, so he said something that's definitely unsexy. So that's the one thing I'll defend him on. That was actually a joke, not an attempt to be sexy. But he's filth and garbage, and it was so funny. Within 48 hours, he went from, oh, I'd like to protect my privacy, thank you very much, through to, okay, because he had a junior minister position, and he resigned that straight away, but I'm going to stay as an MP. And then straight after that, the current leader of the National Party said he should consider his future. And then within another day of that, it was like, oh, I won't be contesting the next election. And just goes to show how unpopular he is in his own party, quite honestly. Because, again, people trying to say anything about the fact that he paid for these trysts with a young lady. It's not that there was money involved in this transaction. I don't even give a fuck that he's married and fucks around. It's just that he is one of these pieces of shit who's been posturing and saying, on moral grounds, I'm going to deny these gays their rights because they're not moral. It's like, it's this weird fucking stereotype that the people who do this are betraying their own marriage. They go, I'm going to deny the gays' marriage to protect traditional marriage. At the same time, they're fucking around. And that was like, wow, that's Australia's year summed up. It started and it finished with a national MP in a sex scandal. And then there was another one. There was another one that came after. It started off with this unnamed MP that the federal police had looked into because there were stories that he'd been around the seedier parts of Southeast Asia. And the feds were worried this was leaving him open to blackmail. Namely like, you've been frequenting these areas. Basically, the suggestion was this unnamed person may have been a sex tourist. And the feds are saying, well, that leaves you open to blackmail. Because people go, you have this role in a Conservative Party and it would tarnish your image if people knew you were visiting all these brothels in Southeast Asia. And yeah, they could blackmail you for it, and that's not good. And no one was naming it except everyone who wasn't in the media was going, it's George Christensen, isn't it? And he is one of the most vile, disgusting, objectionable people in Australian politics. Racist, misogynist, homophobic, bigoted piece of shit. Big surprise if it was him. He's a hypocrite. Now, he came out and said, they're talking about me, but it's not true, which is super weird thing to say. The federal police had investigated someone that they thought was putting themselves in a situation where they could be blackmailed, and he came out and said, they're talking about me, but I didn't do it. And it's like, sure, okay, fine, yeah. And his defender saying, oh, you know what? He was spending money and he was giving money to churches. Yeah, that is probably it. That is probably what was happening. We probably won't hear that he was paying for sex and drugs in Southeast Asia. We probably won't get a confirmation of that. It's probably he's over there giving money to churches. Sure, that's a thing. That is probably what he was doing, despite the interest of the federal police. And it's probably not going to come out that it's something much, much worse. It's probably not going to come out anything about paying money to sexually abused children. That's probably not on the table. It is probably definitely giving money to churches, okay? That is probably definitely what's going on here. He's probably definitely not going to be another one of these hypocrites. Because what are the odds? What are the odds? I mean, it's already happened so many times. What are the odds it would happen again? I mean, it's just unlikely. We can all agree, right? That probably isn't happening. So brush it under the rug, sweep it aside, because we don't expect any enforcement agencies to give a confirmation of anything untoward in there. Let's put it aside. Forget I brought it up. Not happening, okay? And like I said, while that put me in mind of doing a slightly early retrospective of the year, so much other stuff. And of course, the Trump shit show continues. You know, we've got his former lawyer being convicted, the former head of his campaign being convicted, and you know, the conviction's basically saying these guys did criminal stuff with Trump. I'm only prosecuting these guys now, but they did it with Trump. And it's like, God, he must be losing it. And then his defense secretary, Mattis, resigns because Trump just blurted out in one of his normal tweet brain farts, pulling the troops out of Syria, maybe out of Afghanistan too. And his war dog general, who was defense secretary, said, no, I can't go along with that. Fuck it. And you get all these establishment people who are saying, he was the last grown-up in the room. Fuck it. Anyone who works with Trump is complicit in the worst of Trump's bullshit. Fuck this. Oh, I'm working on the inside to calm him down. Fuck that noise, okay? You're bloody improving your own life and getting what you can, and you're complicit in all his bullshit. But Mattis's resignation letter, wow. I mean, what you've got to see is that he never says anything about it being an honour to serve under Trump. He says it's an honour to serve the American people. He never says anything good about Trump. But there's two paragraphs that go one after the other that are super telling. Basically, Mattis says, I think it's important we support our allies and recognise our enemies. Next paragraph, you deserve a defence secretary who agrees with you. And although the Trump supporters have managed to blinker themselves to what that means, what Mattis has pretty much straight up said with barely concealed contempt is, hey, any decent fucking person backs up their allies and smacks down their country's enemies. You, motherfucker, are doing the opposite. You're a piece of shit. I'm not going to work with you anymore. Get some fucking toady who'll swallow your bullshit, because that ain't me. Fuck you, motherfucker. I'm out.